I'm 82 years old, and the truth is, I spent 40 years planning for a retirement I thought would finally let me live. I'm sitting in a quiet house as I say this. Too quiet, most days. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just empty. The clocks still work, the lights still turn on, but there's very little that actually needs me anymore. When you reach this age, you don't think much about what's ahead. You think about what's behind. And some nights, what's behind feels heavier than what's left. I'm not telling this because I want sympathy. I don't need reassurance. I am telling it because I know how easy it is to make the same mistake I made without realizing it as a mistake at all. When I was younger, I believed in being responsible. I believed in planning. I believed that if I sacrificed now, I'd be rewarded later. That was the logic. It made sense. Everyone around me agreed with it. I grew up watching my parents worry about money. I watched bills sit unopened on the kitchen table. I heard arguments behind closed doors that were always about the same thing. So, when I became an adult, I promised myself I wouldn't live that way. I promised I would be prepared. In my 20s, I worked hard. In my 30s, harder. I wasn't reckless. I didn't waste money. I didn't chase big dreams or wild ideas. I chose stability. I chose the safe job, the steady income, the long hours. I told myself I was being mature. I got married young. We weren't deeply in love the way people talk about in movies, but we cared for each other. We were practical. We talked about budgets before we talked about feelings. We talked about the future like it was a destination we just had to reach. Once things settled down, I used to say, once we're more comfortable. Once we've saved enough. Those phrases followed me for decades. Every morning I woke up early. Same routine. Same drive. Same desk. Same conversations about numbers, deadlines, and plans that always stretched years ahead. I was good at my job. People trusted me. That mattered to me more than I admitted. At home, life kept happening quietly. Dinners were short. Conversations were often postponed. I'd say, let's talk later, and mean it. I really believed there would always be a later. When my children were small, I told myself I was working for them. That's what I said when I missed school events. That's what I said when I came home too tired to listen properly. I thought being a good provider would make up for my absence. I remember my daughter once asking if I could stay home from work on her birthday, just one day. I remember telling her no, explaining how important my job was. She nodded like she understood. Children do that. They accept explanations even when they don't feel right. I told myself I'd make it up to her someday. Years passed like that, quietly, without drama. That's the dangerous part. Nothing felt wrong enough to stop. There was always a reason to keep going. My wife and I stopped having real conversations somewhere along the way. Not fights, just silence. We talked about groceries, repairs, plans. We didn't talk about disappointment or longing. We were both tired. We were both waiting for a future version of ourselves who would finally have time. I kept telling myself, retirement will fix this. More time, less stress. We'll travel. We'll reconnect. We'll slow down. I planned meticulously, accounts, investments, projections. I knew exactly what age I'd retire and how much I'd have. I took pride in that. It made me feel in control. But control has a cost, and I didn't see it at the time. The cost showed up in small ways. My son stopped calling as often. Friends stopped inviting me to things because I always said no. My wife started doing things without me. Not out of anger. Out of habit. I noticed, but I didn't change. I told myself it was temporary. Then, one day, it wasn't. My wife got sick not long before I retired. Nothing dramatic at first, just fatigue. Doctor visits, medications, Suddenly, the future we'd planned so carefully felt fragile. I retired anyway, on schedule. I remember my last day at work. People shook my hand. They told me I'd earned it. I smiled. I believed them. I came home that first week of retirement feeling strange, like I'd been running for decades and suddenly stopped. I expected relief. Instead, I felt disoriented. My wife was already tired most days. Travel plans were postponed. Walks became shorter. Conversations circled around appointments and limitations. She died 2 years later. That's when the clarity came. Not all at once. Slowly, painfully, in pieces. I realized I had spent my healthiest years preparing for a time that arrived broken. I had saved for experiences my body and circumstances could no longer fully hold. I had delayed living until living became harder. After the funeral, people told me to enjoy my retirement anyway, to stay busy, to find hobbies. They meant well. But no one talks about the silence that follows a life built around preparation. When the goal is gone, and so are the people you meant to share it with. My children were grown by then. They had their own lives. I wasn't central to them anymore. I had assumed I would be. That was my mistake. I thought being dependable would make me unforgettable. I thought sacrifice guaranteed closeness later. It doesn't. I look back now and see how often I chose tomorrow over today. How often I postponed joy because it didn't seem practical. How often I treated time like something I could store away safely. You can't. Time doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't care about your plans. It passes whether you're present or not. There are things I can never fix. Conversations that never happened. Apologies that came too late. Moments that passed without me noticing they were important. I don't beat myself up over it, that doesn't help. I understand why I did what I did. I was afraid. Afraid of instability. Afraid of failure. Afraid of ending up like my parents. But fear makes a poor compass. If you're listening to this and you're younger, I won't tell you what to do. I don't have the authority for that. All I can tell you is what I wish I had understood. Planning is useful. Responsibility matters, but they are not substitutes for presence. They don't hug your children. They don't hold your spouse's hand. They don't sit with you when the house gets quiet. I thought life would begin once I reached a certain point. I didn't realize it had been happening all along. Now, my days are simple. I wake up, I make coffee. I sit by the window. Some days I feel grateful. Other days I feel the weight of what's gone. I don't have many regrets about money. I have many regrets about time. If this meant something to you, you don't need to change everything. Just notice where you keep saying later. Later has a way of disappearing. As for me, I'm learning to live in what remains. It's quieter, slower, more fragile, but it's still here. And I try, every day, not to waste it the way I once did.